Hello, I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. Today is November 3rd, and you're watching The Pipeline. Thank you for joining us today. I'm joined, of course, as usual, by Western Standard news editor Dave Naylor.
Derek?
Nothing better than that. That's all you got?
I'm saving it.
Also joined by Western Standard Alberta political columnist and host of the Corey Morgan Show, Winnie the Pooh.
Eeyore. I mean, yes, Winnie is an inspiration.
I'm not sure if you can see at home. Definitely you can't if you're listening on podcast. But Corey's got a classy Winnie the Pooh tie on.
You're insistent on making me wear ties. That's fine. But I'm going to choose
this. This is like working to rule. This is your form of
something like that. Dave and I's union didn't take off really well, so it's these small acts of rebellion.
Who's the shop steward of this Western Standard Writers Union?
Corey.
Well, there you go. Where's the problem?
There you go.
Workers of the world, forget about it. Today we're going to be talking about COP26, the big powwow in Glasgow. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there defending Canada's interests, speaking well of the great accomplishments of Canada's oil and gas sector in reducing emissions. We'll talk about the good work he is doing there. And speaking of Justin Trudeau, can he get it up? The flag.
The flag.
Can he get the flag up? So, I did not mean to imply anything else.
Nothing worse than a flag stuck at half-mast.
Drooping.
Yes, a drooping flag. It makes
you may as well not even get it on the pole. Just don't even try to get it up unless you get it up.
Nah, go to bed.
Yeah, just forget about it. We're going to be talking about the flag flap going on here. Flags have been at perpetual half-mast for at least roughly 7 months. Running up against Remembrance Day here, it might be a bit of a problem. Hard to get things down to half-mast when it's already there. There's a pill for that.
Yes.
So, and we'll talk about a different kind of flap. Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw. Ooh, that relationship's starting to get testy. Jason Kenney has thrown Dina Hinshaw under the COVID bus. Dina Hinshaw's canceled her press appearances. We're all waiting to see what's going to happen now. Potentially some serious fallout coming from that. Before we get started, though, I want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your continued support. Without you, we could not do the work we do in building an independent, government funding free Western press. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com, click on membership. You try it free for 15 days. It's only $10 a month, or $99 a year, whichever one suits you. Try free for 15 days, see if you like it. I bet you're probably going to. About 92% of people who try it do seem to like it and continue on. Okay, well, let's get started. COP26, Justin Trudeau has made his way to Glasgow, but first I think he went through Rome and the Netherlands.
Yeah, partying all the way in pubs.
Observing social distancing, wearing masks, doing his part for flattening the curve, right?
Yeah, not so much. He started off in the Netherlands. He was pictured there in a pub with champagne and just people crammed in and non-social distancing, no masks. From there, he went to Rome and spread carbon emissions between Amsterdam and Rome for the G20, and then on to Glasgow for the Glasgow Gab Fest on climate change. 30,000 people arrived there, some 400 private jets, all spewing emissions along the way. And Trudeau's first big announcement.
I heard it was 600. Maybe I'm wrong.
Hundreds anyway.
Many hundreds.
Including probably the most expensive one, Jeff Bezos' private jet arriving. So Trudeau marked the first day with a speech to delegates saying he is immediately putting a cap on oil and gas emissions. This was something they had campaigned on, but he wanted to be the world leader on climate change, so he came out with it there. Jason Kenney did not have a lot to say, other than that he was a bit upset that he wasn't consulted before Trudeau made this announcement. Asked what he was going to do. Kenney really didn't answer as usual. But, a straight stab to the economic heart of the West, gentlemen.
Well, Corey, we've got all these important people meeting by Skype. I believe they're meeting by Skype or Zoom or something, because that is how you would stop a massive amount of emissions from doing this. So
Justin mentioned a pandemic that is still apparently going on.
Yeah. So they're all meeting by Zoom right now to save on emissions and make sure no one spreads.
No.
Yeah. Did you see the video of Joe Biden falling asleep?
No, I heard something else about Biden. We'll that one.
I'm not sure if that's true or not.
No, but it was funny.
It was funny. Well, maybe it's true. I don't know. It's a bit outside of our purview.
Something to do with the poo.
Just stop it right there, Corey.
There's always got to be toilets.
I know where you want to go with this, and we're not going there.
All right.
We're not going there. But Sleepy Joe had a nap in the middle of a big plenary session. It was.
In fairness, you can only be yelled at so many times by a teenager and told you're the worst piece of crap in history. No wonder he fell asleep. He got tired of listening to Greta.
Yeah, no doubt, getting scolded.
Well, he was woken up, though, by a chanting of Let's Go Brandon.
Yes.
Yeah, the crowd was chanting Let's Go Brandon, and that woke him up. No, actually, they had to send an aide over, and he came over and tapped him on the shoulder, and Joe woke up and rubbed his eyes a bit.
Can't blame him. I'd fall asleep too, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, but not everyone was sleeping through this. Corey, how much does this announcement really matter? Rachel Notley announced the cap of the oil sands emissions, and Jason Kenney has kept it in place. Does that actually change very much?
Well, yes, I'm afraid
it just wasn't federally imposed before.
It does in our case, I think. Like normally, these are big virtue signaling fests for the world's elites to get together, and we see all they really do is party, rub shoulders, and talk feel good things, but never actually really do anything. I mean, Norway's increasing their oil production. Germany's burning coal for this winter. They're all talking big, but they aren't acting. I mean, the Paris Accord is now the old one. The Kyoto was before that. Nobody ever met the goals. You just state those things and you don't do anything. Trudeau is a different animal. This is a less than cerebral prime minister who makes it pretty clear that he doesn't think much on economic issues. He doesn't. It's not his realm. He doesn't worry about it. He doesn't have a legacy. I mean, he's into his third term now, but he hasn't really established anything aside from being the second and lesser of the Trudeaus in power in Canada. He wants to make his mark here. He wants to be the one who put down the big bad oil field and saved the world from climate change. I think his cap is real in putting Guilbeault in environment and the other, was it Wilkinson in industry? He's getting ready to actually, not just talk, but act, and it's going to damage us.
Okay. It's very clear where I think he wants to go. He's got Guilbeault, Gilbeault. I don't know. What do we call him? Do we know?
Gilbeault.
Gilbeault. He's got Gilbeault in environment, Wilkinson in
natural resources.
Natural resources, coming from environment where he was already pretty hardcore there. This announcement of the cap, I'm not sure this is actually going to change much because Alberta's already had a self-imposed cap. As I said, Notley brought it in. Kenney maintained it as a part of a Faustian bargain with Trudeau already. This is, I think, just a sign of Trudeau maybe setting the board, saying, well, we've now capped it federally, and maybe we're going to push below. But I'm not sure an announcement of a cap amount. And also, this goes back to the Supreme Court ruling on the carbon tax. The Supreme Court ruled that the federal government, the provincial government's jurisdiction over natural resources is null and void as long as the federal government believes that it's in the interest of peace, order, and good government of Canada to regulate the environment. It's the most abused, overused part of the Constitution, period, for federal intrusions in the provincial jurisdiction. This just means, I think this is just Trudeau setting up the board to go further into it. But a cap in and of itself, I'm not sure is actually going to do that much.
Well, see, I can see this as a massive chill. It was already hard to get investment out here. You can see how it's framing it. I mean, his flowery speech, he talked about how Lytton burned because of climate change.
It's a tonal change, and it is, I think, strategically important politically. But we already have a cap here. We've had it by our provincial governments going back to about 2016.
And I don't think we've been near it, though. I think it was a generous cap, if I recall. I mean, there's a lot of ifs going on. Yes, where is he going to set it? How is he going to enforce it? What are we going to do with it? But as I said, in the case of Trudeau, though, I think he wants to do more than talk. In this case, he really wants to actually hammer down somehow. And I'm scared to see how he does it.
And he took a plane full of bureaucrats to learn how to do it. 277 Liberal bureaucrats joined him in Glasgow too, and they're all taking notes on how to bring this stuff into life. And
Step one, stop flying 277 people overseas for a virtue signaling fest.
Exactly, and that didn't include 17 press aides and the Trudeau's official photographer, his official videographer,
Hairstyles.
It just goes on and on and on.
Well, I'm sure. So Erin OToole has come out very strongly in defense of the oil and gas sector against this cap on Alberta's and in Saskatchewan, to a lesser extent British Columbia's ability to generate energy wealth. What was Erin OToole's big response?
I've been searching. I spent this morning searching. For those who follow me on Twitter, I've been less than happy with him. I cannot find a peep or O'Toole even acknowledging that the conference happened. He hasn't responded to it. He hasn't done anything. He's got his head in the sand. He's hiding from this issue. It's pathetic, to be blunt. It's pathetic. I mean, there's a lot that could be spoken of on this. I mean, climate change is a real consideration. People are concerned about it. Well, let's talk about some of the things the energy sector's done. They have reduced emissions intensity. They are going into carbon capture and hydrogen projects. We're doing a lot of things already. These are things that O'Toole could have been speaking of. Again, it's not shutting down all efforts to hinder climate change, but he could speak up for it. And no, he's just decided just to not touch it whatsoever, and it's sad.
My question is, why isn't Kenney over there saying, okay, look, this is what Alberta's doing. This is what our industry is doing. And, concrete examples of because, there's been a lot of work done to reduce emissions.
He could have been saying those as much as
And where is Scott Moe? Why isn't Scott Moe over there saying the exact same thing?
I can't really say as much about Moe, but Kenney can't afford to leave within 100 meters of the legislative precinct right now. That his government is too embroiled in daily scandal. The political intrigue going on, significant parts of his caucus want him gone. Huge parts of the UCP membership and base want him gone. At least almost every few days, a new scandal of some kind breaking out. And he's got no political capital to speak of. We just had a referendum on equalization where Albertans decisively said they want to change the status quo, one form or another. Something that was a very popular promise to do in the last election. And what happened? Nothing. The silence is deafening because he's got no political capital. Jason Kenney could invent a device that made oil net emissions zero. Like the oil sucks carbon out of the air. He could come up with the greatest scientific invention tomorrow. I think he's got so little political capital right now that no one would take it seriously. He's just got no ability. So if he went to COP, I think he'd probably just get a bunch of bad press because he's an Alberta premier who does support the oil and gas industry. No one's going to care what he has to say, and he's got no ability to influence things right now. He can't influence things in Alberta, let alone in Ottawa. Well, so speaking to failure to get things up on the agenda, we're going to talk about Justin Trudeau's difficulty getting it up the flagpole. Dave, kind of set the groundwork, lay the groundwork for us. How long have we had the flag down for? And what are we expecting as we approach Remembrance Day here, and some of the veterans groups are not too happy about this?
As Corey said, the flags were lowered after the start of the discovery of bodies at residential schools, the one in Kamloops and then the one in Saskatchewan. Trudeau ordered the flags lowered then, and they've stayed lowered ever since. And it's ludicrous because cities only lowered them for a while. Some cities, actually once I think it was Victoria, only lowered them for 215 hours, which was the number of bodies that they apparently had discovered in Kamloops. But Trudeau wanted the federal building flags kept lowered, and they've been kept lowered ever since. And as we know, we're getting close to Remembrance Day, honoring our tens of thousands of war dead and injured over the years. And Trudeau has made no effort to raise the flag so they can be lowered again. So how do you honor veterans when the flag's already lowered? Do you lower it into the mud? So the controversy's been building. Trudeau was asked about it in Glasgow, and he said, well, consultations are still going on with the Indigenous communities as to when we should raise the flag. So we're down to less than a week till Remembrance Day now. Consultations are still going on. I don't know why Trudeau just can't unilaterally say, 6 months of remembrance is enough. We're going to raise the flag now, lower it on Remembrance Day, and every September 30th on National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, we'll lower it again for that day.
I need to do some math on this. Maybe remind me. I am pretty sure at this point that the Canadian flag has been on federal flagpoles, federal buildings, has been lowered for more days over the residential schools issue than all other acts of remembrance since the Second or possibly First World War.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because that's a single day.
Yeah.
So, add that up by a number of years since these wars. The flag has been lowered more than it has been for the veterans of 2 world wars since at least 1945, possibly 1918. I'm going to have to do some math on this, but I think it adds up pretty easily that we've spent more. If we're going to measure acts of remembrance and grief in days per flag being down, and I think that's pretty strange. And remember, Remembrance Day is actually, it's down for, is it just a few minutes?
No, they start in the morning and
Yeah, sunrise and sunset.
Yes. Okay, so it's not even 24 hours. So it's roughly 12 hours.
It's a very strong symbolic action.
Sure,
You
yeah.
start your day by lowering that in the morning, and then end with kind of a positive note. We have made our observance. We've remembered. We've mourned. And now we're moving forward, and the flag will go back up.
Usually it's national tragedies. The flag goes down, and then it goes back up again at the day of the funeral. But certainly nothing like this. I mean, keep in mind, there's 70,000 dead in World War I and World War II, each of those conflicts. 250,000 injured in each of them. And they get 12 hours once a year. And now this has been 7 months, and consultations are still going on. Less than a week before Remembrance Day. It's truly a controversy that Trudeau's made for no reason whatsoever.
And First Nations didn't ask for this because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No,
First Nations aren't, there's differences in their leaders. I think some of their leaders are better than others, like any form of governance and authority. But they didn't ask for this. None of them asked for this. This is a white liberal woke thing.
Yeah, they want something other than this. I think this is the exact kind of crap that's led to them being in the mess they are. Virtue signaling. Bullshit, basically, but no action. I mean, they want action. They're very upset. I mean, we did see hundreds of unmarked graves at residential schools. The nation was horrified. They want consultation. They want resolution and things moving forward. And Trudeau, in true to Trudeau form, takes the easiest path. Well, we'll just lower the flags indefinitely rather than actually doing anything. It's an insult.
I wonder if they've stayed down longer than he originally intended because he was caught in Tofino on the first National Reconciliation Day. So he said, well, okay, I'll keep him down lowered for a little bit longer.
If there was any foresight whatsoever into this permanent flag lowering debacle, it would have probably been to have it resolved roughly, maybe a month earlier from now. But then his Tofino trip, that was a pretty significant blow to his political capital with all Canadians, but with First Nations in particular. I mean, it's pretty hard to have your grand gesture of raising the flag back up because everybody's kissed and reconciled and made up. Hard to do that when he creates a national holiday out of thin air and spends the very first one going surfing in Tofino. So I think it's largely a matter of political capital. I grew up mostly in military, Air Force and Army towns. So Remembrance Day was a particularly big deal for me growing up as a kid. I still go to these things, but it's not quite as all-consuming as an entire day of parades and marches and ceremonies and eating egg salad sandwiches at the Legion all day. But this is a big deal for a lot of Canadians, even those who don't maybe live and breathe this in military towns. I don't see how we're good. It's weird to. I have a hard time seeing how politically he's going to get his way out of this. It's now just going to have to be. He's going to have to raise it back up before Remembrance Day, but we don't have an answer yet.
He's getting pressured. I mean, it's starting to turn into an issue finally. I think he'll come out and say, "Okay, I've made enough phone calls, and we're going to do this.
We'll reconcile.
Raise it the day before, and we'll go through the ceremonies." But such a pointless mess he's made as usual. And I mean, I saw some columns on it, with people talking, saying citizens who don't even realize or know that the flag was down. It's still down. They don't know why. I mean, the gravity of it has been so eroded due to this foolishness. And we shouldn't forget, if you go to the Heritage Canada site, it shows the number of days that the flag gets lowered for annual things. A couple are like a firefighters, emergency responders remembrance, because a lot of them get killed. There's another police one. Those two passed without the flags being lowered.
Yep.
And
So when the Queen dies, it's going to be lowered for a year.
Well, regular watchers will know that Dave is an ardent monarchist. If it was his way, we'd just do away with Parliament and put the Queen directly in charge.
She would make more sense.
It's way better than what we got right now.
I'm not saying it wouldn't have a better result. Although, who'd be worse, Trudeau or Charles?
Charles would be entertaining at least. Trudeau just angers me.
I don't know who'd be worse, Trudeau or Charles. Both entitled phones.
Leave Charles as king in England and Prince William as Prime Minister of Canada.
Hey, now we're moving along.
Well, I'm personally in favor of a Hohenzollern restoration, but I'm not sure that's a very popular option right now.
No, it's not.
No. All right, let's move on. Speaking of deposing and strange fights here, this is not as good of a segue as I was hoping. Jason Kenney and Dina Hinshaw. Jason Kenney pretty much blaming the debacle of ending his Open for Summer, Open for Good plan on Dina Hinshaw. Lots of drama. Dave set it up.
Yeah, if you picture COVID as a bus, Jason Kenney is the driver, and poor old Dr. Hinshaw is underneath his front wheels as we speak. In questioning at the legislature this week, the NDP was onto Kenney again about the COVID crisis in Alberta, and he laid it squarely on Hinshaw's feet. He said he wanted to bring in lockdowns earlier or quicker to try and prevent the fourth wave, he claims, Hinshaw says they weren't necessary. Now, we haven't heard from Hinshaw yet. She did have a regularly scheduled press conference Tuesdays and Thursdays for the last month or so. She suddenly canceled her press conference yesterday. So we haven't heard her side of the story. And you remember the fourth wave just decimated Alberta. Death tolls daily, as high as closing in on the 40 range. ICUs were filled to maximum. AHS had to open surge ICU beds. It was a mess. And Kenney was slammed from all sides for not bringing in, for doing something to slow the wave of the Delta variant. And now he has firmly blamed Hinshaw, saying he wanted to, but she advised against it.
Corey, I recall Jason Kenney saying something about Dina Hinshaw's not in charge. He's in charge. She makes recommendations. He makes the decisions. He's the decider, if you will. Does that still apply?
Well, this reminds me of a recent staff meeting I attended where a gentleman was speaking on, when things go well, it's my thing to take credit, and when they go poorly, it's the other person's issue.
I don't know who could have said such an outrageous and pompous thing.
Yes, but I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, Kenney has used Hinshaw as a foil for almost 2 years now. I mean, when it's an unpopular decision, he says it's the medical decision. When things did go right, that was me. I opened us up for the best summer ever. And this is just, I'm sure she must be getting tired of that usage. But I mean, she's more popular than him, which,
that's not hard.
A lot of people are getting kind of tired of Dina Hinshaw as well.
COVID is more popular than Premier Kenney right now.
And then Hinshaw is almost the closest thing he had to an asset, at least as a part of government in a sense, that people respected and listened to and looked forward to. Throwing her under the bus is just kicking himself in the nuts. I don't know if he's trying to set a new record for low support or what he's doing, but it's mind-boggling.
What do you think of the risks that Hinshaw says, screw it, I'm out. Clearly the Premier doesn't have confidence in me, so I'm out. And then she's a free agent. She's free to hold her own press conference and say, let me show you how the sausage was made over the best summer ever. Let's just go through how this all went, what the Premier knew, when he knew it, what advice I gave him, what advice I didn't give him. If she does that, we don't know exactly what she knows, I guarantee you she'd have a few things to say that would be less than ideal.
Oh, absolutely. I guarantee you she probably took tape recording meetings of all these.
Allegedly thought maybe, no.
Allegedly.
No.
Or took detailed notes at the
Dave
very
is guessing.
least.
We are not even alleging. That is just a
That's
guess.
just a straight guess. But she's guaranteed to have had detailed notes on it and take, especially after the meetings, and wrote down exactly what happened. She's obviously not a smart, or is a smart woman, excuse me. She's obviously a very intelligent woman, and she may have seen the writing on the wall a couple of weeks ago that the blame was coming her way. So it's going to be really interesting to see.
Her contract would require non-disclosure. I mean, you guys, if you leave here, you're not allowed to tell everybody about the things that definitely do not take place around here. That's
I
pretty.
might have already told some. I'll talk later.
We're gonna have to talk about your contract. You're not allowed to disclose these kinds of internal things, but at the same time, she might be a whistleblower.
It could be leaked.
It could just be. Oops! It fell in the mail.
A notepad landed at the Western Standard office.
Anyone at AHS or Dina Hinshaw's office watching right now, our mailing address is 1220 at 717 7th Avenue, Southwest Calgary, T2P0Z3. We check the mail multiple times a day. We look forward to envelopes showing up.
We do. Not so much packages, because we're not quite sure
Some of those
those,
tick.
but
We've had some
envelopes are
sketchy
fine.
packages.
We have?
None of them have killed us yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, that's a wrap for us, but we're not all you have. Tune in tomorrow, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for Uncensored. That is Bruce McAllister, Danielle Smith, and Rob Anderson. They're going to be talking about some of the madness around wind farms in Alberta, some of the incredible subsidies going into this, and problems it's creating for landowners around them. So check them out, Uncensored, 7 o'clock, Thursday, Mountain Standard Time. Again, I want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your continued support. You guys kick ass. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com, click on membership. You could try it free for 15 days. It's only $10 a month or $99 a year for bailout-free independent Western media that you're probably going to like a lot. Most people who sign up do. All right. Dave?
Derek?
Snoopy?
Ooh, do you have a Snoopy tie for next week?
Not yet.
Snoopy.
I'm accepting ties at the address aforementioned.
You can also mail tacky ties to...
You know what? I like Winnie the
It's got
Pooh.
character.
It's a beloved children's tale.
Once or twice I've been accused of being stodgy and sour. This is lightening it up.
Okay.
He's our Eeyore.
Dave, Sunshine,
Yeah.
thank you very much, and God bless.